The ballroom shimmered beneath golden lights. Music pulsed through the air and laughter echoed across the floor. In the corner sat a young woman in an elegant gown, a thick scar tracing half her face like a cruel memory. Nearby, a group of privileged young men snickered. Who danced with her? She should have stayed home. At the head table, her father, a powerful CEO, sat stiff and silent, jaw clenched in quiet torment. Then, unexpectedly, a waiter carrying a tray of glasses stepped forward. He placed it down carefully, straightened his uniform, and bowed. "May I have this dance?" The entire room froze. The music softened as if holding its breath. At the head table, the CEO's eyes glistened, his heart swelling with emotion. Daniel Cole was 36, a single father working double shifts at the Grandview Hotel, a place where chandeliers cost more than his yearly pay, and guests wore watches worth more than his car. But Daniel never complained. Every night he returned home to his 9-year-old daughter, Ella, who believed her daddy was the greatest hero alive. She would race to the door, arms open, asking about his day as if he had just saved the universe. In his pocket, Daniel always carried a faded blue handkerchief sprinkled with tiny yellow flowers. It belonged to his late wife, Ella's mother, who had passed when Ella was just 2. He never went anywhere without it. It was his reminder, his anchor, his piece of her. Tonight, however, was no ordinary night. It was the Lane Corporation's grand anniversary gala. 500 guests, a live orchestra, and an endless flow of champagne. Daniel had been assigned to the VIP section, longer hours but better tips, and he needed every one of them. Ella's school trip was coming up, and he had promised she could go. Across the ballroom, in a secluded corner, sat Sophia Lane, 24 years old, daughter of Victor Lane, the CEO whose name everyone in that room knew. She wore a breathtaking midnight blue gown that grazed the floor. Her hair was perfectly styled, her jewelry glimmered under the chandeliers, but all anyone noticed was the scar on her face, a jagged mark running from temple to jaw. It was the aftermath of a car accident 3 years ago, the one that had stolen her confidence, her joy, and her smile. Sophia had begged her father not to make her attend tonight, but Victor insisted. He wanted his daughter to face the world again, to reclaim her place, to be seen. But bravery is difficult when whispers follow you, when eyes linger too long, and when people pretend not to notice, while noticing everything. Victor sat among business partners and executives, smiling when required, shaking hands, but his eyes never strayed far from his daughter. There she was, alone in the corner, head bowed, fingers twisted in her lap. He was one of the most powerful men in the city, a man who could close million-dollar deals with a phone call, yet he couldn't protect his daughter from cruelty. He couldn't make the world see her as he did, beautiful, strong, and brave. Daniel noticed her too. While refilling champagne glasses near her section, he saw the way she sat, the way her shoulders folded inward, the quiet attempt to disappear. He recognized that posture. He'd seen it in his own reflection after his wife's death, when the world felt unbearable. It was Ella who had pulled him out of that darkness, with her laughter, her hugs, and her unshakable belief that her daddy could do anything. And now, watching Sophia Lane sitting alone among hundreds, Daniel felt something stir inside him. Not pity, not sympathy, recognition. The music shifted to an upbeat tune. Couples filled the dance floor, glasses clinked, laughter spread like wildfire. Everywhere was life, except in Sophia's corner. At the bar, a group of young men, sons of investors born into wealth they never earned, snickered loudly. One, tall with slicked-back hair, smirked. "Man, I almost feel bad for Lane. All that money and he's stuck with that." Another laughed. "No surgeon on earth could fix that face." A third raised his voice. "Who would even dance with her? She should have stayed home." Their laughter echoed through the room, cruel, careless, cutting. Nearby guests glanced over, uncomfortable, but said nothing. Sophia heard every word. Her hands clenched until her knuckles went white. Her breath trembled. She wanted to run, but her father had asked her to stay. So she stayed, for him, even as every second felt like it might shatter her. Across the room, a group of women whispered behind champagne flutes. Poor Victor, one sighed. Such a successful man, yet stuck with a daughter like that. Another added, money can buy luxury, not beauty. That girl's a broken doll. A third leaned in. I heard she refuses to go out anymore. Can you blame her? If I looked like that, I'd hide too. The words sliced through the air like glass. Victor Lane heard them. He sat frozen, surrounded by smiles, but inside he was breaking. Every instinct screamed to stand up, to defend her. But he couldn't. That would only draw more attention. So he sat there, fists clenched, heart aching. Sophia blinked hard, willing back the tears. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry tonight. She had survived the accident, the crash that flipped her car 3 times, 17 surgeries, endless pain. But this humiliation was unbearable. No one smiled. No one spoke to her. No one asked her to dance. She watched as couples swirled across the floor, carefree and radiant. She imagined being held, being wanted, but it was only a dream. Then, everything changed. Daniel Cole, still holding his empty serving tray, paused mid-step. He had finished clearing a table and was supposed to return to the kitchen, but he didn't move. He looked at Sophia, at the way she sat, the quiet sadness, the loneliness no one dared to touch. His chest tightened. Ella's voice from that morning echoed in his mind. Daddy, you always help people. That's what heroes do. Daniel set the tray down, wiped his hands on his apron, straightened his bow tie, and took a steady breath. Then he walked, calm, deliberate, unhurried, toward Sophia. At first, no one noticed. The music played, dancers spun. But as he neared her, heads turned. Whispers began. What's he doing? Is he going over there? A waiter? By the time he reached her table, half the room was watching. Daniel stopped, clasped his hands behind his back, and bowed. Excuse me, miss, he said softly. May I have this dance? The room fell silent. The orchestra seemed to hush itself. Sophia looked up, eyes wide, lips parted in disbelief. She stared at him as if he couldn't be real. Daniel smiled gently. You do not have to if you do not want to, he said. But I would be honored. Her voice trembled. You are a waiter. Daniel nodded. I am. And you are the bravest woman in this room. Her breath caught. Tears filled her eyes, but they were different this time. Not pain. Hope. Behind her, Victor Lane rose slowly from his seat, hand covering his mouth, eyes glistening. He watched, frozen as the impossible unfolded. Around them, whispers rippled again. Is he serious? A waiter? Asking her to dance? But Daniel didn't flinch. He extended his hand, palm up, steady, patient. Sophia stared at it, at him, at the kindness in his eyes and the courage it took to do what no one else dared. Her hand trembled as she placed it in his. The ballroom erupted, not in mockery but in stunned silence. Daniel led Sophia to the center of the floor. His touch was gentle, his movements respectful. She trembled as they began to dance. Sensing the moment, the orchestra shifted to a slow, tender melody, the kind that made the world fade away. Around them, guests stood frozen. Some curious, some ashamed, some quietly moved. Sophia kept her eyes down at first. She could feel their stares, their judgment. But Daniel whispered, "Look at me." Not at them. Just me. She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. No pity, no disgust. No hesitation. Just warmth, just kindness, just respect. They moved slowly, step by step, until Sophia smiled. Small, fragile, but real. It was the first true smile she'd worn in 3 years. At the head table, Victor Lane covered his face, his shoulders shaking as tears streamed down. She's smiling, he whispered. My baby girl is smiling. The music swelled. Daniel twirled Sophia gently, her dress spinning like a wave of midnight silk. A few people began to clap. Then more joined in. From the side entrance, a small voice rang out. Daddy! Everyone turned. A little girl in a pink dress came running across the ballroom, pigtails bouncing, clutching a piece of paper. It was Ella, Daniel's daughter. She had been waiting in the staff lounge coloring, but when she heard the whispers and saw her father dancing with the sad lady, she had done what any 9-year-old would do. She drew a picture. Ella ran breathless to the dance floor, holding it up proudly. It was a crayon drawing, a tall man in a bow tie and a beautiful woman in a blue dress, their hands intertwined. Above them, in uneven letters, she had written, "Daddy dancing with a princess." The room went silent. Then someone laughed softly, not cruelly, but warmly. Then more joined in, the kind of laughter that melts tension and hearts alike. Sophia stared at the drawing, at the little girl's shining eyes, and tears welled again, happy ones this time. She knelt down, still holding. He crowd hushed as Sophia held Daniel's hand, then looked down at Ella with a trembling smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." Without hesitation, Ella threw her tiny arms around Sophia's neck. "You're pretty," she said earnestly. "Don't let anyone tell you different." For a heartbeat, silence filled the ballroom, then applause erupted. Not hesitant or polite, but thunderous and real. It rolled across the room like a wave, washing away every whisper of judgment. At the head table, Victor Lane rose slowly. Tears shimmered in his eyes as he crossed the dance floor, his chest heavy with emotion. He stopped before Daniel, this ordinary waiter who had done something extraordinary. "Thank you," Victor said, voice breaking. "You gave her back her smile. After all these years?" Daniel shook his head, humble as ever. "She never lost it, sir," he said softly. "She just needed a reason to show it again." Then, something small fell from Daniel's jacket pocket, a piece of faded blue fabric with tiny yellow flowers. Victor's breath caught. He bent to pick it up, his fingers trembling as he recognized the golden initials stitched in the corner. M.M.L. Michael Lane. The name hit him like a lightning strike. His brother. The man who had died a hero overseas. The man who had saved others before he was gone. The handkerchief. Their mother had sewn it for him before he left. Victor's voice faltered. Where did you get this?" Daniel froze. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Michael Lane," he said quietly. "He was my commanding officer. He saved my life in Kandahar, pulled me from a burning vehicle. I tried to save him, but I couldn't." The ballroom went utterly still. Daniel's next words came low and reverent. "Before he died, he gave me that handkerchief. Told me to deliver it to his family, but I never knew his last name was Lane." Victor staggered back, eyes wide, the sound of his breath breaking the silence. "You were there," he whispered. "You were with him when he—" Daniel nodded. "I held his hand," he said. "He told me to tell his family he loved them, that he was proud, that his little brother should take care of their mother." Victor covered his face as a raw, broken sob escaped. For 15 years, he'd wondered about his brother's final moments, whether he suffered, whether he was alone. And now the man who had been there stood before him wearing a waiter's uniform. "You were a soldier?" someone murmured. "He saved lives," another whispered. Ripples of astonishment spread through the crowd. The young men who had mocked Sophia earlier shifted uneasily, shame burning their faces. The women who had called her a broken doll lowered their eyes. Daniel Cole was no longer just a waiter. He was a veteran, a father, a hero. A man who had sacrificed everything and still found kindness to give. Victor stepped forward and pulled him into a fierce embrace. "You brought my brother home tonight," he said, voice trembling. Not his body, but his spirit, his courage, his heart. Sophia stood beside them, tears streaming freely. Ella squeezed her hand, smiling through the wonder of it all. The ballroom, once cold and judgmental, now pulsed with something rare. Humanity. Victor turned toward the guests, his voice cutting through the quiet. "I want to address something." Every head turned. His eyes locked on the young men near the bar. "You," he said sharply. "I heard every word you said about my daughter." Their smirks vanished. Fear flickered in their eyes. "You called her broken. Said no one would dance with her. You laughed at her pain." His voice rose, firm and unyielding. "You're not welcome in my company. Not tonight, not ever. Security, escort them out." Gasps spread like wildfire. Two guards moved swiftly. The men stammered, but it was too late. They were led out of the ballroom, faces pale and ashamed. The applause that followed was deafening. Victor turned to the women who had whispered earlier. "And you," he said quietly. "You spoke about my daughter as though she were a burden, a mistake. Let me make something clear." He paused, his gaze sharp as glass. "My daughter is the strongest person I know. She survived what would have destroyed most people. And tonight, a man with nothing showed her more respect than you ever did. No one dared look up." Victor raised his voice once more. "Tonight I learned something. Wealth doesn't make you valuable. Status doesn't make you kind. A waiter showed more courage than anyone here. And a 9-year-old girl showed more grace than a room full of adults." Applause thundered again. People rose to their feet. Even the orchestra paused to watch. Sophia stepped forward, Daniel's hand still in hers. Her voice was soft but steady. "For 3 years I've hidden," she began. "I let this scar define me. I believed I was less. But tonight someone reminded me that I'm still here, still standing, still worthy." She turned to Daniel. "You didn't see a scar when you looked at me. You saw a person. Thank you for that." Daniel smiled gently. "You're more than worthy, Miss Lane. You always were." Ella tugged at Sophia's dress. "Can we be friends?" she asked hopefully. Sophia laughed through her tears. "I'd love that." The crowd surged forward. People who had avoided her all night now came to her with tears, with apologies, with awe. And for the first time in 3 years, Sophia Lane said yes. The ballroom felt alive again, warm, human, redeemed. Hours later, the guests were gone. Music faded, lights dimmed, and in a quiet corner sat 4 people who would never be the same. Daniel, Ella, Sophia, and Victor, Ella, slept soundly in Sophia's lap, her tiny arms wrapped around her new friend. Sophia brushed a hand through her hair, smiling softly. Across from them, Victor sat with the handkerchief laid gently on the table between them. He hadn't let go of it once. "I spent 15 years angry," Victor said quietly. "At the world, at myself, at everything. But tonight, you walked in, a stranger, and gave me something I didn't know I needed." Daniel looked up. "What's that?" "Peace," Victor said simply, knowing Michael wasn't alone. "That someone cared." He paused, eyes glistening. "And you gave my daughter something even more precious. You gave her herself back." Sophia met Daniel's gaze. "I forgot what it felt like to be seen," she said. "Not stared at. Not pitied, just seen." Daniel smiled. "You were always worth knowing, Miss Lane. The world just needed to realize it." Victor leaned forward. "I want to offer you a job, a real one. You deserve better." But Daniel shook his head gently. "I appreciate it, sir. I truly do. But I have everything I need. My daughter, my work, my life." Victor's expression softened. "You're a rare man, Daniel Cole." Daniel chuckled. "No, sir. I'm just a man who knows what matters." He glanced down at Ella, sleeping peacefully. "She thinks I'm a hero," he said quietly. "And maybe tonight I got to be one. Not because I'm strong, but because I chose to see someone who needed to be seen." Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. "You are a hero," she said. "To me, to her, and to my father," Daniel smiled. "Then I'll do my best to live up to it." They sat together in easy silence as the city hummed beyond the windows. 4 lives intertwined by fate and kindness. When Daniel finally stood to leave, Ella cradled in his arms, he turned one last time. "Scars don't make us less," he said softly. "They remind us we survived." Victor and Sophia watched them disappear into the night. And in the empty ballroom, beneath fading lights, hope lingered, quiet and strong, like the final note of a song.